In our second episode of Living with La Soufriere, we look at the agricultural sector and how it has rebounded. It was reported by the Ministry of Agriculture that food exports from St Vincent and the Grenadines increased during the first month of 2022, signaling an evident recovery in agriculture following the severe impact of the La Soufriere eruptions in 2021. An internal annual comparison to January 2021 reveals that there has been a 5% increase in the quantity of export products and a 38% increase in value. Minister of Agriculture Support Caesar explained that getting to the stage was by no means a walk in the park.
The damage to infrastructure is both from the public sector standpoint and the private sector. So we are well aware in any country that in the agricultural sector, government will have agriculture feeder roads. We will have different forms of assistance that we provide through our agriculture stations to farmers and persons in the farming communities. And persons in the private sector, the farmers themselves, will have their farm sheds, their subdivision roads, and vehicles. And throughout the length and breadth of the country, persons were impacted, but particularly in the red and orange zones, we saw significant damage and loss to the infrastructure, both from a private sector standpoint and from the standpoint of the investments made by the state. The dislocation of labor being a very important factor of production, was also significant. To witness 20,000 persons from the red and orange zones in different areas having to evacuate because of the vagaries created by the volcanic eruptions meant that our workforce in agriculture and fisheries dwindled overnight. Persons left their resources behind, and we witnessed, for example, in the livestock sector, death of many animals. You had dogs going in and ravaging livestock, and this definitely, when you look at it from an aggregated standpoint, amounted to what was calculated in over the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of damage and loss. But we have been very resilient, and before I go into the efforts made by the government and people of St Vincent and the Grenadines, I want to thank all the friendly governments internationally, regionally, and the international organizations that came to our assistance. Without you, we would not have been able to be in the position that we are in now, and words cannot really express my gratitude, and I speak not on my behalf only as minister, but on behalf of every single Vincentian, and particularly the farmers and the fishers.
However, there is no substitute for getting the details straight from the proverbial horse's mouth. Farmers told the Nation News team that in the aftermath of the eruption, they had received mixed fortunes. Long-standing farmer Leon Adams explained that in the early days of the eruption, most had good yields, but alas, as the ash settled, it has formed a barrier to nutrients.
First of all, it was a success just after the eruption.
Right.
Well, for every farmer, it was a success because a lot of farmers get through good.
Right.
Things was good. But after like couple months or so afterward, when the ash settled in the soil, like he developed like what they call like a disease, like.
Oh.
Yeah. So I grew at least 6 watermelon crops without any success. So I spoke to one of the extension officer, and she was telling me that like how the ash now it's settled on the soil now. It's like the plant itself can't get to feed.
Right.
You don't care what fertilizer you give it. If plant can't feed on it. Because like the ash like a cement
Or form the barrier of sort. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, so during the eruption, you suffered some losses, and in the aftermath of the eruption, for 6 crops, you didn't get anything.
No, indeed, no.
So give me an idea, like what type of losses in dollar value that you would have sustained during that time period.
Well, the fact is, each crop I grew, I just get over 3 tons per watermelons.
Right.
That's my favorite crop.
Right.
I would have asked roughly over about 40 something tonnes.
Right.
I had a loan with one of the credit union. I had to went and go and tell them about it and ask them to give me time to get back.
So you have to refinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now, what about now? How is the sector bouncing back at this point? Now that things have settled down at this point.
Well, it's like at this point now. Well, I grew one crop. It was successful because of what I would have learned from from way back then.
Right.
With Epsom salt.
Right. So you have to employ some old time methods.
Yeah.
Right.
So I use Epsom salt with have a magnesium in it, which help to which help the plant to feed.
Right.
I soak the roots, soak the leaves, and then later on now I come across the saliniter. And when I read the label on it, it carries the same magnesium and so now I mix the magnesium with the regular manure.
Right.
And give the plant them. And the little rain was coming again to help. So I get to with this one.
Top planting grower Nayoka Abbott said she was experiencing similar problems. She explained that the root system of our crops were developing issues, and as a result, plants were toppling over on a regular basis.
After starting again, about 2 weeks after that I came, I got help, cut down all the planting and start carrying those little suckers that came up, and then I got back a good field. But what is happening is the ash that still remains on the ground. To me, it is causing a problem to all all our produce. For those of us who are into banana and plantain production, when we have hot sun, it seems like the ash destroys the roots of the plant. So when you go around now, you see a lot of toppling of the trees because of the damage that is being done to the root. But nothing with prayer, and if the good Lord grant us some heavy rainfall, I believe maybe by the ending of the year we would be able to see the disappearance of the heavy ash, and our plant will be able to develop roots where they could sustain themselves.
Is it the case of the ash like concretizing and forming a barrier?
Yes, because when I notice it, when I have a look at it, when there is rain and the earth is wet, because of the ash, you have to be very careful, because you slide like if there is some form of cement on the ground. When the weather is dry, then you will see the ash now become kind of powderish. Sometimes you hear and the wind blow, and then you see practically like if you have a cloud storm where the ash gets up into the air and you see that kind of reaction. So I believe there is some kind of cementation with the ash on the floor.
What type of, I mean, you see you had to flee, leaving pretty much everything. You had some bunches in the field, but then you also had plant material that has a cost as well.
Yes.
What would have been your estimated loss?
Oh boy, it kind of hard to do a estimated loss, because what I had was planting and also a lot of sweet cassava, and then everything damaged. Everything was damaged. To do a costing, it will be very hard, because one, you don't know what is, because the cassava is underground, you don't know what is there so that you could put a value to it. Then with the planting now, bunch size is very hard to determine, that you could say, well, okay, this bunch I'm going to get $25 for that bunch, or that kind of thing. So it's very complicated doing the maths, but sometimes in order to make things work, you will have to do like a estimation. So I would say within that period, I would have lost about $25,000 worth in agriculture produce.
Okay. Recounting how difficult it was to start over her farming enterprise from scratch, Abbott said it wouldn't have been possible without government assistance. However, she lamented that the distribution of government support lacked equity, as farmers were lumped into one category, irrespective of acreage.
And also, I would like to sing praises to the government also, because we were really, those of us from the red zone, we were really assisted. And one of the things that happened also is that the Ministry of Agriculture and the government, they got together, and what they did is that they did a compensation for farmers in the red zone of $500 every month. Until I think it was for 6 months, they did that. But I am one who says it as I sees it. I wasn't too happy with you giving farmers in the red zone $500 per month. Agriculture is not a one size fits all. There are some farmers who have just a half acre of land. There are some with 1 acre, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I wasn't too happy that everybody was just put in this one category. I know maybe the funding was small and they tried to assist all farmers in the red zone, but to me it wasn't fair, because with 2 acres of land and I'm getting $500 and somebody with a half acre of land getting $500, it's hard to really bounce back with that 2 acres and the $500.
Right.
So I am saying this, I want it to be heard, I want it to be passed on, so that when our decisions makers are sitting down to make a decision, please put on a good thinking cap. And I will always say, agriculture is not a one size fits all.
For farmer Jennifer Charles Yearwood, some crops are thriving better than others.
Like the cabbage is like when you planted it, is like, you know what I mean, you're not getting that, maybe the ash is too heavy. Well, for the peanuts is like, the peanuts keep going, flashing. And the sweet peppers, I haven't received any loss. And well, the yams, no loss at all. The potatoes, basically. But yeah, basically that.
It is interesting to note that even after the first 2 days of eruptions, that St Vincent and the Grenadines, we were still exporting food. St Vincent and the Grenadines is a food secured country, and we are seen as the food basket of the Southern Caribbean. And we have a very important network of traders who would move goods to Trinidad and Tobago, to Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, all the way up to the British Virgin Islands. And they have a very close working relationship with the farmers in the country. And this trade continued throughout the period of the eruptions. And I'm really proud of the farmers and the traders in our country. What the government did as well, we recognize that throughout the country, there were many crops affected because of the heavy ash fall. And it was also noted that these were not as marketable for export. So what the government did is that we bought these commodities, we employed persons to do the extra washing, and we redistributed these commodities to the different areas where vulnerable persons were who had evacuated. And this created an internal market for the farmers. Farmers saw it as an opportunity to return to their lands very early.
Persons who export agricultural produce to neighboring islands such as Barbados told the Nation News team that they are not back to the levels they were prior to the eruption, stressing that the quality of produce is not yet up to the customary mark. One such trader, Dacia Pope, said she has been forced to cut down on the tonnage.
So, like, it's in between. Some places you would get some big fruits, planting would be the grade would be real good. That's the quality that Barbados really does look for. They would get it. And other places, it would not be so nice because of the soil system and the manure. So some part would have fertile soil and some part would have soil that not so fertile. So because of that now you will get a lesser grade than the real fertile soil with the ash of the volcano. It would produce better quality planting than the other soil that is not so fertile.
However, Minister Caesar is predicting that by the end of this year, the agricultural sector, albeit with a new look, would have made a full recovery. It is therefore fitting that we end episode 2 of Living with La Soufriere with the minister explaining his vision for the future of the sector.
Predicting that by the end of this year, the middle of next year, all being equal, that we would be back to the numbers that we had. It's important too that at the same time we are witnessing, even though we are still in the early days of the aftermath of the volcanic eruptions in St Vincent and the Grenadines, that the demand for food from our country is still very high. So even though we have seen significant reduction in the quantity of livestock that we have in the country because of the volcanic eruptions, it has not reduced the demand, and we are still exporting livestock. And this is something that we are balancing and we are managing carefully in the country. As it pertains to root crops, we are back up to the levels of production because the agri-ecological zone for root crop production was mainly in the yellow and the green zones. So those areas were not really as affected as in the red and the orange zones. From the standpoint of cocoa production and tree crops, we had a significant, we suffered significant damage in the red and orange zones as it pertains to the cocoa industry, the nutmeg sector, the soursops, and we are still at the early stages of replanting for that. The medicinal cannabis industry was hard hit, and I am aware that several investors lost significant infrastructure, and to date there are some persons who have not even gotten to the stage of trying to rebuild the infrastructure. The persons who are invested in St Vincent and the Grenadines, whether it's local persons from the region or international, you have a license, and the license comes at a cost, and so there is some capital outlay upfront, and when that takes place and you have your projections, you have your budgeting, you have your plans, and you are hit overnight by volcanic eruptions, definitely some persons were thrown off. But even though we had many persons who were affected, we still were able to export cannabis to Europe within the last 3 months, and there's a significant demand for the movement of commodities overseas. What we have witnessed though is that some persons, most persons of course, in the illicit production on the hillsides of the volcano, definitely their production significantly devastated, and we have used the opportunity to ask persons who are in the illicit production of cannabis to come to the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and to apply, get a license, and to join the formal process.